Then you have a hepatic resection, right? So you can do liver resections for hepatocellular carcinomas, but again here it is limited because we can only take, in a cirrhotic liver, we can only take about 50% of the liver out. I mean, even that it's a bit difficult, but resection, they have shown hepatic resection is the best option and outcome for hepatocellular carcinomas. Then you have these ablative treatment options. Ablative treatment options are secondary to hepatic resection, right? So there again, ablative treatment also, it is, there's a limit. So usually they say less than 3 centimeters. Now we use radio frequency ablations. Those days we used to inject, Dr. Wattegam, I can remember injecting alcohol, and now alcohol is going out of fashion, so it's radio frequency ablation. And now newer variety has come, it's microwave ablations. We can go for a slightly bigger lesions as well. Now cutoff is about 5, but still between 5 and 3. So anything bigger than that, we don't have any option. But then we can take the fourth option of whether we can go for a transarterial chemoembolization. Then again, there is limitations, because in a background of cirrhosis, if you do transarterial chemoembolization, you are shutting off you are cutting off blood for half of the liver. So patients can easily go into decompensation. They are compensated with a cirrhotic liver, and then when you take off blood supply for half of the liver, they can sometimes go into decompensation. So that is, so you have to always think. And if you have metastatic disease, of course, you can go for sorafenib, which is a multi-tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which can be used for metastatic disease, right? And even the assessment of liver cirrhotic diseases, first thing that you must think is whether you have to get into this child score. I hope you can remember the child score, where you analyze the albumin level, ascites levels, and INR, right, and encephalopathy, and then get a score. And if it's child's A, then you can go for a resection. But child's A also, there are good child A and bad child A, which is depending on the portal hypertension, which I'm not going to details. But child's A, we can think of resection. You can send for surgeon. Child, if you think it's child fall into child's B, then surgery is out. Then you must always think of whether we can do something, local ablative therapy or TACE. But even TACE is a bit risky, but local ablative therapy. Child C, of course, if you have a patient with child C with a hepatocellular carcinoma, I think we should not intervene at all, because we are just going to decompensate. And there are certain situations where I have seen this, because when you become a VIP, you get all the treatments in the under the sun, and then you get decompensated. So things like that happen. So child C, best thing is to just leave it alone. Non-cirrhotic livers, of course, we can take 2/3 of the liver. So this is one of the this is a resected specimen of a hepatocellular carcinoma, and this is also a local, I don't know whether it's clear, but it's a local ablative therapy. It's a small lesion, you can see there is an 80-year-old patient where we have ablated, it has become hypodense after a few months. So this is local ablative therapy. So that the top lesion on the left hand side, top lesion, there's a, you can see well enhanced lesion, hyperdense lesion, and then so it has died. The cells in that area has died, so it's a hypodense lesion. So you can give TACE. So this is an elderly patient where we can't. It's ideal for resection, but he's too old. He's about 80, I think 82 or 82. So because of that, we have selected to do local ablative therapy, which is very successful actually. Microwave ablations. And then things like these big lesions where we can't do anything, we can do TACE or block the arterial supply of these lesions. Next common malignancy is hepatic metastasis. So I will talk only about colorectal metastasis, because these are diagnosed in the staging process of a lesion. These are not usually incidental ones. So when you have a primary tumor, you do staging and then you diagnose these. So these lesions may be synchronous. That means with the primary lesion, you can diagnose a secondary lesion in the liver, so it becomes synchronous lesions. Or else sometimes down the line with a colorectal patient, let's say colorectal malignancy, initial scans are normal. Down the line, when you do a liver resection, liver scans, you might see a lesion. So those are metachronous lesions, right? So so they usually appear like hypodense areas with peripheral enhancements, right? And this is one of the colorectal liver met. You can see the peripheral enhancement with hypodense area, the typical appearance of a colorectal metastasis. So Most of the hepatic metastases, we are consider them as stage 4 and usually sent for palliation. But selected cases, we can operate with a cure. Right, there are the selected cases are, you can colorectal malignancies, definitely we can resect with a cure, carcinoids and neuroendocrine tumors. These are the standard ones for resection. But now certain still now breast cancer, whether they are trying whether it's worthwhile resecting, and some of the new in the Scandinavian countries, they are trying to think of transplantation also for colorectal liver metastasis. Right. Now, for colorectal liver metastasis, because we know that we can go for a cure with resection, we will select the patients, right? This is again not the very intricate details of how do you select, but just basically what we need to do is that we have to exclude that there are no other metastatic disease elsewhere. Maybe pulmonary is the only exception where there is lung metastasis you can resect, but single one. But otherwise you have to exclude metastasis, right? And we have to always think of the type of metastasis. I mean, I told you the malignancies that we can offer surgery, colorectal, neuroendocrine, and carcinoids for the time being are the ones which we select. And we must always think of, once we do the resection, whether we are leaving behind enough liver. So it's known as future remnant liver. We must always think of the volume as well as the quality. So whether we are leaving the correct amount and the remaining liver quality is good. So if you are not sure of the quality, then we can also do a biopsy and see how bad the liver is before we plan these things. And number of Mets and the liver, how the liver is involved, whether it's the liver metastasis is on both sides, whether we can do a resection, then we can't do it. But like that, we must see where we can number of metastases. So usually more than 5 metastases in a liver, even if it's onto a single site, we would say, there's no point doing this much of, taking 5 metastases, but obviously there should be smaller ones which we can't see. So in those situations, we have to always think twice before we go embark on a liver resection, right? Now, then again, because of this, very promising results of liver resection, people are going to the extremes of trying to increase the liver volume, future remnant liver, whether we can increase the volume, right? There are various procedures that we do. We sometimes ligate the portal vein to increase the liver volume, right? Sometimes a new procedure which is coming, ALPS, where we transect only the liver parenchyma and leave in the vessels intact for a week, and then it has shown that it grows in size, and do the liver resection. So these are the advanced techniques that we use to enhance the liver volume, future remnant liver of the volume. And sometimes, of course, yes, we give neoadjuvant therapy to downsize it if it's a marginal tumor and then resect. And transplant possibilities also being tested now. So it's in the research level. So there are Scandinavian studies are doing whether it's possible to do a transplant. So this is so we can go at the liver, because colorectal livers are nice livers, they are no cirrhotic, so we can go for extension of taking big chunks out. And actually this patient survived, not an autopsy specimen, right? Okay. So next is the cystic lesions. So cystic lesions, basically when you get a cystic lesion, just remember that cystic lesions, we basically divide them into parasitic cyst or a simple cyst. Now, simple cyst is also very commonly seen, usually asymptomatic, we just can leave it alone. But big cyst can cause a little bit of discomfort, and it can act as a space occupying lesion and cause problems, and there can be hemorrhage into the cyst, or it can get infected. So now next picture is in the ultrasound scan how it appears. These are clear margins, multiple cysts in the liver. So when you see these polycystic livers, you must always look at the kidneys, whether he has got a polycystic kidneys as well, and in the pancreas, because these are patients who are having polycystic disease. Or you can have a single cystic lesion like this. Even though it's really big, it's not causing them any problems to this patient, so you don't have to do anything. And then again a polycystic polycystic liver disease. This is again one of the VIPs in Kandy who has this. And then he came to us with a complication of the cyst where it has got infected. You can see the wall of the cyst is thick now, and the material inside was pus, and it has actually ruptured into the through the duodenum into the thorax, where we have managed this patient. And actually now if you look at that, one of the cyst is actually pressing on the heart, but amazingly the patient is completely asymptomatic and he doesn't want any kind of intervention to that particular cyst. So even though they are saying space occupied lesion, but they somehow live without any problems, right? So management, asymptomatic, leave it alone. Symptomatic, best thing is to do a laparoscopic deroofing, because aspiration is not going to work, it's going to refill again. Aspiration with some sclerosant therapy has been done, but it is also not very effective. Then the parasitic cyst, this is just for your knowledge. I mean, you can, not knowledge actually, just to remember that there was a thing called hydatid cyst, especially patients coming from Middle East and all that, you have to always suspect whether it's a hydatid cyst. I know one can remember this chart. I can, after parasitology, we just, that part of the brain was taken off. So this is the cycle of echinococcus granulosus. This is how they appear. It looks like quite simple cyst, but you can see, I think it's not clear in the thing, you can see daughter cyst, and sometimes you might even see a worm inside this cyst. And you must always suspect this in a especially not in Sri Lanka though, but patients coming from Middle East and also Mediterranean countries and East Europe, very common in East European countries. So treatment wise, you give antihelminth drugs, and for long time, actually about 4 to 6 weeks, so then it sterilizes the cyst, and then you have to surgically resect it out. You can't leave it alone. And there are various ways that you do cuff of tumor with the cuff of liver with the cyst. Why? Other important thing is liver abscesses. Now, liver abscesses, I don't know. When I was a registrar and a senior registrar, we used to see quite a lot of liver abscesses. Now it's going out of fashion. When I was working in Mana also, I used to see a lot of liver abscesses. So generally, liver abscess person with liver abscess will have a right hypochondrial tenderness, and the characteristic thing will be intercostal tenderness with fever. And then those days, of course, there are no ultrasound scan. I think even our time there was ultrasound scan. I'm not saying that I didn't have ultrasound scan, but usually it's intercostal tenderness with fever. You consider a liver abscess proven otherwise. So high white cell count, SGOT, SGPT, alkaline phosphatase will be elevated, but strangely the bilirubin levels will not go up. So it's mildly elevated, but basically it's SGOT, SGPT, because there will be cell death because of the abscess. So that because of that things will go up. And alkaline phosphatase, because of this space occupying lesion, some of the ductules can get blocked, but basically it doesn't cause any liver failure or anything like that. So because bilirubin level will not go up, right? So imaging wise, it's basically cystic lesion, irregular margin, thick fluid will be, the echogenicity will be different, edges will be very hypervascular, and position of the abscess also will give you some sort of a clue what it is, because abscesses, I will discuss it in next slide. Position of the abscess is also important to work out why this abscess is and what is the nature, what is the etiology for the abscesses. So position of the abscess is very important, and in the abscess there will be air, so then you know that it's infected. So if any fluid collection with air inside, you have to always suspect that it's a abscess or infection. So basically abscesses, we divide them into amoebic and non-amoebic. Amoebic and non-amoebic. So non-amoebic liver abscess is usually from portal pyemia. The commonest cause is that diverticulitis or any appendicitis, right? Sometimes in children with the umbilical sepsis, you can have this portal. So any portal pyemia can cause liver abscess. And next thing is that when you have this cholangitis, sclerosing cholangitis, sometimes you can have abscesses related. So that's why I said you must see the abscess where it is related to a main bile duct or branches, or whether it's directly related to the gallbladder, because gallbladder also sometimes can, pyoceal sometimes can rupture into the liver, so because of that you have to look where the abscess is. Then of course hematogenous spread, that is when you have endocarditis or you have sepsis somewhere else, you can have liver abscesses, and especially patients who are immunocompromised patients, right? Hematogenous spread usually occurs on those patients. And of course, infection of a existing simple cyst, right? That also may present as a liver abscess. Amoebic abscess, I think it's going out of fashion now, usually in the endemic areas. Now, I told you when I was in Mana, of course, I used to see because there are a lot of toddy. Usually they are with amoebic colitis, and lesions are on the right side. The famous Ancoison's appearance. I mean, the problem is that even liver clinically suspect, but it is very difficult to prove that it's a amoebic abscess, because you culture, you don't see the amoeba in the microscopy. Even the wall scraping, they say send it, but you never see it. ELISA testing is the only thing that is, you check the antibodies, but it is also not freely available, so you can't really make a diagnosis, a definitive diagnosis, but we will make a diagnosis of a amoebic abscess when there is no other things, and the fellow is a toddy drinker. We always put him as a amoebic liver abscess. Right, this is how abscess appear. The cystic wall, and then there is hyperdense area where, because of the high vascularity, you see it as hyperdense. Right. Management, of course, small lesions, you can give antibiotics and it will settle. You don't have to aspirate or anything like that. And even amoebic abscess, those days we used to give just fragile, that is enough. But now, because amoebic abscess can always get secondary infected, because of that, you must think of gram-negative infections also in the amoebic abscess. Because of that, you have to cover them as well. So it's better to cover it with some antibiotic which covers gram-negatives. Larger lesions, best thing is to aspirate. Aspiration, the problem with aspiration is, if you aspirate today, tomorrow you go and do the scan, it will be filled again, the same size. So, body will never have any empty spaces, like potential spaces. It will always get filled up with serous fluid or something like that. So you can't assess it really. And then the things get filled up again, can get infected. So it will be a it's a never-ending saga. So it is better for a larger lesions, if you think that if you are going to need a proper drainage, it's better to leave a catheter inside or a pigtail, so that you can drain it continually, because otherwise you will be keep on pricking this guy to drain the abscess, which is not really good. Surgery, of course, only recommended now in cases where there is ruptured liver abscesses. Just to clean up the peritoneal cavity, you might have to do a washout surgery. Cystic lesions, the important thing of the cystic lesion is, very rarely some of these cystic lesions can be a cyst adenoma, where it carries a risk of malignancy. So that is the thing about cystic lesion. So if it's a clear, so this, we have to make this diagnosis, right? Because if you see this, you have to resect these things. These are usually large things, again seen only in females, usually multiloculated. So if you see the next CT image, you can see it's multiloculated. Then you suspect these, whether it's a possibility of a cyst adenoma. If you suspect it's a cyst adenoma, it's usually better to resect it, because it carries a. So there are clues in the imaging that you might think that it is a cyst adenoma, echogenic wall, loculated, and sometimes you might see papillary projections, especially when you do good scans, ultrasound scans. So in those situations, you have to think of a cyst adenoma possibility. So, and then you have to consider. So those are the basic solid and cystic lesions that I have to tell you all, and just to assess and just to get your memory refreshed again about these lesions. Thank you very much.